Happy 2020, guys! Sorry for the radio silence since my last video. My job got increasingly more hectic as the holiday season progressed, and I had a bunch of projects I was being paid to do, all unrelated to video making. Let's just say, the holidays can be a very hectic time for a lot of us trying to make ends meet. Remember to be nice to retail workers, guys. The horrors of the holiday season are very real. Although, I don't want to make any grand statements, abolish ICE, by saying that being part of the working class, unionize, during the holiday seasons is a hellish time, and the only solace you have is the hope that you can pay your bills and get your family and friends some worthwhile gifts, and maybe enjoy some eggnog, or a bottle of gin. Oh, capitalism. Again, not trying to make any grand statements of any kind. No, I wouldn't want to sound direct and final and pick sides. Like when I say the Trump administration are monsters for cutting food stamp benefits and possibly leaving 7 million Americans starving, or how they're incarcerating children at the border. Nope, I don't want to sound biased, I don't want to pick a side. I might offend people. In fact, I'm terribly sorry if referring to the Yule season as the holidays. I'm sorry if it's a bit offensive to you all. I understand that there is indeed a war on Yulemas. I know there's a bunch of other holidays out there like Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and something dealing with a magic virgin birth baby, and something involving three kings or whatever, but I don't want to seem too political, and I'm sorry if the mere hint of politics is enough to send you crying into your Linkin Park bedspread. I hope you all had a happy holidays. I mean a happy Yulemas! And anyway, to start the year, here's a video on politics and social issues and how they benefit critical analysis of geek fiction and culture. Oh dear God, why do I do this to myself every year? Let's just get this out of the way. If you find politics and social issues as nothing more than a joke, but you still want to have a say in serious discussion, then you are a fucking privileged tool and you need to be quiet. I don't expect everybody to be embroiled in politics and social issues. I get it if you don't like fighting or if you don't want to pick a fight with anyone. Fair enough. However, I'm gonna put this as kindly as I possibly can. Please keep your opinions to yourself. If all you can add is politics is dumb and doesn't matter, then please kindly shut up. Whether you know it or not, or want to admit it or not, a lot of your favorite stories are probably political to some degree, especially if you can describe them as complex. If there is indeed an in-universe chain of command, a status quo being exploited or being followed or being challenged, a power structure, different parties and factions, a society with norms, parallels or allegories to real-world issues, or God forbid those issues being portrayed directly, or characters clawing for power, or even contains heavy subject matter at all, then congrats! Your show, movie, video game, anime, or comic is, to some degree or another, a bit political, and possibly socially aware! That's not necessarily a bad thing in on itself. If anything, it can make your story or critique of said story more interesting, enriching, intellectually engaging even. You can't tell me Palpatine's rise to power, him exploiting other groups who bear discontent with the Republic, convincing the Senate that the Jedi were plotting to overthrow the government, bolstered by the so-called assassination attempt by the Jedi, and the establishment of the First Galactic Empire wasn't interesting, or that it wasn't political? How about Black Panther, where the subject of isolationism is brought up, where T'Challa is pondering whether or not they should reveal themselves to the outside world and provide foreign aid, and maybe share their riches to help improve the world? And given the events that transpired in the movie, T'Challa sees how blindful ignorance of the outside world can be damaging, not just to the outside world, but to themselves. Or how about Captain America Civil War, where the heroes are split down the middle? To be honest, if this was like in the comic, where it was registration for metahumans in general, I'd be inclined to be anti-registration. But in the movie, yeah, not so much. Sorry, Cap, please don't hate me, please. It is very viable to be Team Cap or Team Iron Man, and there are no clear-cut good guys or bad guys. Sure, there was Baron Zemo, but he was mostly there to escalate the situation. This story asks the question regarding national security versus personal freedom, brought up by the fact that the Avengers are a powerful, independent group, and while they do save the world, there is still collateral damage, and there needs to be accountability. It opens up the opportunity for deep discussion, and all of that is very interesting. You can't deny that. You can't say no to that. It can be very interesting and fruitful to analyze the work of a creator where they get it right, as well as when they fuck up. Like pretentious edgelords like Zack Snyder, who tried to be political with Batman v Superman for a bit, where the movie sort of tried to ask the same questions as Captain America Civil War, kind of, however dropped that by killing all the politicians in the room. Wow, so enlightening! What did we learn, kids? Governments are so corrupt, they want to control everything. Humanity will always fear what they don't understand. Wow, so thought-provoking, so deep. And while yes, it's fun to make fun of creators when they fuck up, and our criticism can help others do better in the future, when creators fuck up badly, it can affect a lot of people, specifically teaching people horrible lessons, warping their way of thinking. Media has that kind of power over people. When you decide to include social or political themes, a lot more is asked of you as a creator or a critic. You could possibly be teaching people bad lessons. Isn't that right, Frank Miller? Yeah, Frankie Boy created this horrible xenophobic screed called Holy Terror, supposedly telling a story about superheroes combating terrorism, and this comic was supposed to be like one of those old-timey war propaganda comics from World War II. But this comic turned out to be nothing more than an Islamophobic, badly drawn garbage fire. And somehow he got praise for this, like news attention praise. But then when you read this comic, you realize that this is a horrible racist book. Apparently Frank thinks that Al-Qaeda is just one small group in a global secret organization of Muslim terrorists dedicated to take down Western civilization or something? Was he writing Alex Jones's next bedtime story? And if you didn't think Frank wasn't being Islamophobic at all, despite what I just explained, just the first page features a supposed quote from Muhammad: "If you meet the infidel, kill the infidel." And yeah, this quote is fake. You can even teach bad lessons even if your show is supposedly sporting left-leaning themes. Steven Universe's Season 5 ended with Steven making nice with the diamonds, basically telling people you can win fascists over with the power of kindness, friendship, and forgiveness. Let's just forget about how the diamonds oppressed their people, how slavery is normal among them, how they conquered millions of worlds and stripped them of their resources, corrupted millions of gems with the intent of obliterating the rebellion. Let's forget the human zoo. Let's forget how they nearly killed the closest thing Steven has to an actual mother, or how they shattered millions of gems and forced fused them to create a geoweapon meant to blow up the Earth. By the way, the only reason why they listen to Steven is because they think he's Pink Diamond. If it was not for that, Steven and his friends would be dead. The Diamonds did not learn of their own accord that their way of ruling is horrible. They only did this because some special boy came into their lives and told them to stop being bad guys. But apparently they're supposed to be an allegory for a broken family, and you need to be nice to your family. You need to forgive your family. So if Frank Miller was my uncle and he started spewing out racist Islamophobic rhetoric at Thanksgiving dinner, it would be wrong of me to beat his ass, throw him out, and tell him to never come back. You're basically saying, oh, it's okay, just forgive and play nice with fascists and tyrannical mass murderers despite everything they've done. That is so naively stupid. You can't apply elementary school level philosophy about kindness to something this serious. What's next? Kylo Ren turns over to the side of good because he's sad, and we're supposed to ignore all the evil things he's done up until this point? Don't be ridiculous. Who in their right mind would forgive this pathetic sad sack after everything he's done, and after this large of a body count that he helped contribute to? See, these themes add a lot more meat to the conversation on how creators and critics succeed or fail at all these kinds of things. Sure, it's not the only way to critique something or show your analyzing skills or show your writing skills. You still need to focus on the writing of said story. However, the themes are still a big part of that, and your analysis could come across as, well, very shallow. However, there's a staggering number of people who strongly believe that social issues and politics have no place in geek culture and want to keep politics out of everything that isn't politics because it's so depressing. However, politics is the core backbone of every culture, and culture is where art, entertainment, and our belief systems originate from. You can't tell me, especially after all the examples that I have listed, that artists don't implement their own political beliefs or understanding of the world into their work. Isn't that right, Frankie boy? And those political themes, the views expressed, and how the creator expresses them will tell us a lot about them, not just as creators, but also as people, as well as the people who praise said work. Why? One's views on trivial or even serious subjects will highlight one's priorities, your views on the world and how much you care about others. And I think teaching people bad lessons about not trusting the Muslims because they might be terrorists is probably something you shouldn't be teaching people. Isn't that right, Frankie boy? Still waiting on that apology for creating that racist screed. No, that interview wasn't an apology, it's just him saying that he doesn't have the anger to do it again. That was not an apology. Politics is part of everything and influences almost every aspect of our lives, from how much you're paid at work to even policies on certain websites that could affect the livelihood of thousands of people. Fiction can also be very much influenced by politics, obviously, whether intentionally or not. The story had to be made by a person, and that person is going to have beliefs, priorities, views on the world and how they think the world works and how they think people work. Even myths can be reflective of the politics of the time. Even the simplest of stories can make the most political of statements, whether directly or indirectly. Again, on Star Wars, a story where the lower class fight back against their fascist tyrannical oppressors. It just so happens to have space wizards. That is inherently political, and it's kind of relevant right now. The fighting against tyrants part, not so much the space wizards part. Heck, you can find it a lot in slice-of-life comedies. Golden Girls, Family Guys, Black Jesus, Boondocks, All in the Family have proven even the simplest slice-of-life comedies can tackle social issues and politics. If anything, they're more appropriate there, since they tend to be more grounded. And it helps that the people who made those shows know what they're talking about and aren't apathetic to social issues and politics like certain other creators, Parker and Stone. Although I don't want to sound absolutist here, just because your story happens to have political themes or social commentary, it does not mean it will be good. It's like having big, expansive lore, or having serious tones, or having great animation, or a redemption arc, things people automatically think are good just because they exist. All those things are a means to an end to help enhance a story. They won't, however, save a story from being terrible. But if you are a critic or a fan who really likes analyzing or discussing the things they love and like challenging your minds, then you should be open to analyzing political and social themes when they appear. Analyzing these stories, their themes, their subject matter, their lessons, their messages and meaning is a lot more difficult than analyzing lore or world mechanics. With lore, it's just basically memorizing everything and recounting it for the fan wiki page. And with world mechanics and physics, those are kind of irrelevant for the most part because we tend to give fiction a lot more leeway. It's called the suspension of disbelief. Sure, it's interesting to speculate as to how superpowers work, or how to build a fully functional AI, or how to build a TARDIS, or being able to build a power suit, but honestly, the science of any work of fiction just needs to make relative sense, like super strong spandex that can withstand bullets and lasers.
That is not spandex! The material is a self-assembling memory!
Not a lot of sense, just some, just enough to remain somewhat consistent, but the suspense of disbelief remains. Examining more complex themes requires a great deal of social awareness, problem-solving skills, general wit, research, life experience, and basically things you can't get anywhere by staying within your bubble and assuming everything exists in a bubble. If you have chosen to be ignorant or apathetic with politics and social issues, but for some stupid reason you still try to analyze them, then it will show how ignorant you are. Furthermore, show how your analysis has very little merit and how shallow it is. Made worse if you prefix your analysis with, "I'm gonna be very objective about this." For example, on Star Wars, oh, don't we just love Star Wars? There are people who genuinely think issues like sexism, racism, or general bigotry is very unlikely in the Star Wars universe since it's a more advanced and enlightened society than our own. The fact that everyone seems to be fine because we see humans living alongside aliens, therefore there's no way that bigotry could exist. That might seem smart on the surface if you have no idea how societies work, fictional or not, or if you're not paying attention to the very thing you're analyzing. Also, in the real world, we're more enlightened and advanced than people 100 years ago, or even 70 years ago, and we interact with people from different walks of life, yet bigotry and fascism still exist. That's like saying just because there are laws in place to prevent crime, that people don't break them at all. Are we really under the impression that only villains are capable of being bigots or capable of offensive behavior? Even though people understand bigotry is bad, that doesn't mean it still doesn't happen. What about Lord of the Rings? Are we just gonna ignore how elves and dwarves snipe at each other all the time? Heck, even in Star Trek, where capitalism is effectively dead in the Federation, we still have people like the Ferengi. Also, remember this guy from Teen Titans who called Starfire what was literally no two ways about it, no matter how you spin it, a racial slur? Societies, no matter how advanced or enlightened, are not perfect, but a smart person would know that. But at least it makes it interesting to see how we're gonna deal with fascism and bigotry, and hopefully not done in a bullshit way. Again, general inequality and bigotry still exist today as much as we don't want to admit it. Even if we understand it to be wrong, there will always be somebody out there who try to rationalize it. There will always be people who are gullible enough, crazy enough, ignorant enough, and diluted enough to listen. Hi, Comicsgate. Yeah, let's address that right now. If you are a creator, a supposedly well-informed consumer, or a worthwhile critic, but you are ignorant to politics and social issues, then you are a prime target for certain opportunistic fuckbuckets trying to get you to swallow all the red pills. Innuendo Studios did a great video on how the alt-right try to prey on vulnerable geeks who have developed a hatred for politics and social issues popping up everywhere, especially when these vulnerable people happen to be very vulnerable white straight males who are very apathetic to important topics. These vulnerable people also tend to be those who try to avoid talking about anything but the most safest, everybody can agree kind of politics out of fear it will divide people. One of the manipulation tactics is usually trying to win people over with politics everyone can agree upon. Basically that alt-right nonsense that tries to sound centrist and ill-offensive that everyone can agree upon. There's very little conflict if everybody can agree upon it. Wow, this person knows what they're talking about, unlike those SJWs who just create conflict. Look, if you're gonna hang out with the Nazis, then be my guest, but if your main reasoning for listening to them is because they hate politics as much as you do, and you don't want to give into all of this societal pressure, all of this SJW infection, all of this people being divided, why can't we all just be unified? Then enjoy the Kool-Aid and red pills. To be fair, I'm not advocating pointing out themes where none exist. I've said this before that I don't like fan theories, and I definitely don't think every analysis or hot take on any given piece of media are equally valid. I mean, if that was the case and I did believe that every critique, every analysis, and every hot take was on equal footing, then I'd believe that the Angry Birds movie was a critique of modern feminism, or how a show having a female-dominant cast is somehow having an anti-male agenda. Obviously, I believe that bullshit critiques exist. We've all seen these so-called critiques before. It even happens among performative allies who think they're helping. Just by comparing one person's work to another, you can see who actually knows what they're talking about. Like when Sarah Z says marginalized creators shouldn't be criticized for their work and that it's wrong for minorities to get angry when creators fuck up at representation. Like when Rebecca Sugar engages in hiding your gaze or fails to notice the racist drawing published in an art book. But Sarah does not want to believe that, and then goes off lying about another person's work because they know more about the animation industry than you, Sarah, and would know what an executive producer's job is, and also knowing what an executive producer is supposed to take responsibility for. And also wouldn't need to lie about another person's work.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar for designing a contentious scrapped character that many felt evoked racist imagery.
Sugar didn't design this.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar for designing a contentious scrapped character.
Sugar didn't design this.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar.
Sugar didn't design this.
And on another note, yes, I understand. You just want to watch something because it's fun. I get it. You want to watch the superheroes beat up the bad guys. Sometimes you just want to go on a magical adventure. I get that. You guys think I watch Power Rangers, Teen Titans Go, DC Superhero Girls, Craig of the Creek, Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of all of the lore expansions, glimpses of heavy subject matter, or any other superficial qualities fans mention so they can be taken seriously for liking a kid's show? No, I like them because they're fun. Remember that? Fun? In fact, let's focus on making things fun. More slice-of-life comedies, please. Possibly with gay Power Rangers in an adorable relationship. Please make it happen. Sorry, back on point. Also, even if someone does have a point to their argument or analysis, you don't have to engage or accept it. However, if you believe someone's analysis or critique or claim is wrong, then here's the thing. Put up or shut up. Prove it. Prove how the X-Men are not an allegory about oppressed groups, specifically racial minorities and gay people. Prove how Falcon and Captain America weren't tackling issues regarding class and race. Prove how Civil War was not about personal freedom versus national security. Prove how Raven fighting against employment discrimination isn't making any strong statements. Prove how The Division 2 is not flirting with gun debates or how capitalism contributes to the fall of a society. Prove how Star Wars and Avatar weren't about an oppressed lower class fighting against a tyrannical power. Prove how Voldemort wasn't obsessed with eugenics. Prove how Static Shock didn't talk about racism, addiction, the homeless, and etc. Heck, prove to me how Blizzard executives aren't being evasive and how their apology for banning Blitzchung was not half-hearted or half-assed, and how they aren't being cowards towards Chinese investors, and how that isn't giving into tyranny. Okay, I kinda got off track there, sorry. I'm sorry, not sorry, but if the themes are there, it's there. And as I said before, you being able to accurately spot social and political themes, not write them off as SJW infection, and understand them enough that you can reliably analyze them, it adds a great deal to your critique, as well as to the media that you are analyzing. Honestly, geek culture likes to boast about how impactful and important these works of fiction are, how they teach us meaningful lessons, how they aren't just for kids, and are intellectual enough for adults, and how the fandom are not just wasting their time. Yet when the opportunity to prove that comes knocking, it's a lot of strong words but no commitment. Honestly, it feels like fans of any media just want the appearance of complexity and just want to mention these themes, maybe have some sort of interesting imagery, but never delve into the meat of these topics. Social issues and politics have a bigger chance to influence people than, say, lore or world mechanics. A story, a message can indeed influence people, their ideas, their views, their priorities, their actions, and how they look at the world, and ignorance can lead to a number of problems, as I have mentioned. How you approach social issues and politics, your stances on the matter, your priorities will paint who you are as a person. Your views will show how much you care about other people. If you choose not to care about other people, then why should they care about you? Especially if you do or say something ignorant, sexist, racist, or just generally bigoted and you double down on it. Another point of concern in regards to analyzing or creating fiction with a political or socially aware lens is that the creators might be pushing their own agenda. And to that I say, so what? It doesn't really matter if the show or the creator has an agenda. What matters is what the agenda is and how they're implementing it. I mean, Family Guy is pretty much pro-vaccination and pro-choice, mainly due to the fact that Seth MacFarlane is a very progressively minded person. Heck, Seth MacFarlane makes fun of conservatives on a regular basis with American Dad. Final Fantasy even had an environmentalist message at one point. Rocco's Modern Life just recently showed they're very much in favor of trans rights. You're not going to say that they don't have an agenda? And is that agenda necessarily bad? Even if the creators did have an agenda, you gotta ask, is so-called agenda a bad one? And how do they handle this subject matter? And sometimes they handle them quite well. I don't think anyone in their right mind would call being in favor of the rights of women, racial minorities, or LGBT people, or, don't be racist, don't be bigoted, don't exploit people through capitalism, don't be a tyrant, as having a bad agenda or teaching a bad lesson. The 90s had shows that were overflowing with environmentalist messages, and while they varied in quality, you don't see that as having an agenda? Here's the thing. A lot of fiction, especially animation, or even things like superhero comics, tend to be very left-leaning by nature. So if you are mad that the creator is pushing an agenda about how fascism is evil or talking about the importance of equality, then maybe you need help, or just don't interact with normal human society ever again. A lot of people like to think that their media is always apolitical, that they don't have an agenda, they don't cater to any sort of cause, they don't pick sides, they don't make any grand statements or deal with heavy subject matter. For very, very simple stories, you might be right, but as I mentioned through numerous examples, even the simplest of stories can have very social and political themes, and it's all very fascinating to think about. And if you want to be taken seriously as informed consumers or creators or critics, then maybe it would benefit you to be more socially aware and involved and not treat every bit of heavy subject matter or every progressive idea as SJW infection or cockery, and see politics as, well, it just divides people and creates conflict, or, well, people are forcing their own agendas down our throat. Why can't we all get along and respect each other's opinions, blah blah blah.
I choose peace.
Peace is a beautiful but shitty idea.
Grow up! First of all, if you only care that people are arguing and divided and not why they're arguing and divided, you will always remain ignorant to the real world. That is a fact. Politics doesn't divide people. It exposes evil people, or at least very questionable people. Second, you guys throw a shit fit every time a woman, a black person, gay people, trans people take center stage and think it's some sort of big, grand political statement. Or the creators forcing some sort of agenda. A lot of you swallow right-wing propaganda by feeding into the fear of forced diversity. I think it's very clear, there's no two ways about it, you guys need to get out of your bubble and get help. If a gay character or a racially diverse cast, a female-dominant cast, or even having female leads is too political for you, which they aren't, then you are the one making it political. You're the one with an agenda you can't control. And to the people who take this stuff seriously and actually want to improve as well-informed consumers, creators, and critics, if some jagoff tries to write all this stuff off as SJW infection, then don't worry, it means you're just doing it right. Stay the course. Happy 2020, everybody. Now let's boot spray tan Hitler out of the White House. Go Blue Wave! Alright, come at me, comment section. Let's see what 2020 has in store for us.